as much as I do. I am so glad she's on the show. She performed last month at Sky Stage and was an absolute hit, totally crushed it, and I know she's going to do it tonight. So please join me in welcoming to the microphone the very funny Hannah Piper, everyone!
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing tonight?
All right.
Excellent, excellent. My name is Hannah Piper, and I'm a trans woman. I think that's pretty fucking cool. Thank you, thank you. If you didn't clap for that, I'm going to assume that you also reread Harry Potter without having a horrible mental crisis. You try and reconcile the joy of childhood memories with disgust for the one responsible for them. Sorry, I didn't mean Rowling. I meant my mother. Yeah, I know what you're thinking right now. Another one? Really? Isn't this a little bit much? Yeah, it is. Sorry. No, when I first started coming out to my friends, they're all really supportive. They said a lot of nice things to me, with one exception. So he said something that really got under my skin. Do you know what he said? Oh, yeah, that's not surprising. Excuse me? That's not surprising to you? Because it was surprising to me. Yeah, no, and I think some people find that strange, and I get why, because there is this image in the media that all trans people know we're trans from a very young age, and that just wasn't the case for me. No, it was, I know I was trans in the same way I think we all know we need to do something about global warming. Yeah, something is very wrong here. Not sure what to do about it, but I have a feeling if I don't figure it out soon, we're all going to have a way worse time with this later on. When I first after I came out, people started asking me questions. They say things like, "How long have you been trans?" And the answer to that is surprisingly tricky. If I had to pick a single fuck date, I'd go with November 3rd, 2020, which some of you may remember is also kind of an important date for this country because there was this small election that was really shaping the future of this nation. And for me, suddenly those stakes were a lot higher. I'm like, oh wait, this is really gonna matter for me, huh? Which is not to say that I didn't care about the results of the election beforehand, because, okay, this is gonna make me sound like a radical leftist, but I don't need a bad thing to affect me directly before I care about it. So the other thing that happened when I figured out that I was trans was I went to a doctor and said, "Doc, I'd like to get on hormone therapy." And he said, "You know what, that's fair. That's a good thing for you to do if you're trans, and you want that. But before we do, we have to talk about some of the irreversible side effects of hormone therapy." And that's a scary phrase, irreversible side effects, even if you know what they are and are prepared for them and even into them. But we had to have that, if you walked into a Taco Bell and they said, "Before you order, we need to talk about the irreversible side effects of it." You'd say, "I don't need the gory details, just give me the goddamn gordita." That line does not work in the medical industry, I learned that day. So the doc said, "Hannah, there's 3 things we gotta talk about. 1, you may become infertile." I'm like, "Don't worry, doc, froze some of those suckers, we're good." He said, "Great, glad to see you did your research and you're prepared for this. 2, you may develop erectile dysfunction." I'm like, "Doc, it's a dysfunction, I got anything down to get erect in the first place. Hit me with something harder." And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I said, "No pun intended." Because it's harder, guys, a dick joke. Very clever. The doctor did this long sigh. He's like, "Why do I always get the ones that think they're funny?" It's like, "Okay, smartass, you think you know so much? What's the 3rd side effect?" And I start panicking a little bit, because I'm like, oh fuck, I can't think of what the 3rd thing is. I don't want the doctor to think I'm not prepared for this and judge me for it, but I can't think of it. So I go, "All right, doc, you got me. What's the 3rd side effect?" He goes, "You may develop breast tissue." I'm like, "Doc, that's a side effect? What the fuck do you think I'm here for?" All right, I'm gonna do something really dumb now, and I might lose your guys' support in the process, but I'm gonna talk about Dave Chappelle. Ooh, yeah. And full disclosure, I did not watch the new special, but no one told him to go watch a bunch of trans people's lives before he made fun of us, so I think I'm good to make fun of him. If you guys aren't aware of what I'm talking about, a couple of weeks ago, incredibly prolific, multi-millionaire, beloved by the masses, stand-up comedian Dave Chappelle just released his 6th Netflix special in the last 5 years, in which he makes a lot of disparaging jokes about the queer community in general and trans people in particular. It's met with immediate backlash. Netflix pulls it from the air. The entire world says we're never going to hear from this man again. What's that? Uh-huh. I'm sorry, I've just been informed that how that lesson's totally wrong. What actually happened was that, people said, we're kind of okay with it. Netflix said, he's pushing boundaries and also making us a lot of money, so we're not going to do anything about it. And a bunch of dude bros on the internet jumped to his defense anyways, because they have nothing better to do with their time. But I gotta say, I'm with Netflix on this one. Because this whole stand-up thing, it's not about stroking my ego with the laughter of strangers for 5 minutes. No, it's about boundary pushing, goddammit. And thank God someone's finally really pushed the envelope and said it's okay to make fun of trans people. We've gotten away with far too much for far too long. Did you know we basically killed Kevin Hart? Yeah, I learned about this on Dave's special, and it's really sad, guys. Kevin Hart, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's just a small-town kid from Philly who had dreams of making it big one day. Wanted to host the Oscars, and when he finally got the chance as queer people, we just took it from him. And this just broke Dave's heart to see poor little Kevin stripped of his livelihood, left for dead with nothing but tens of millions of dollars. And for what? All he'd done was make some jokes about wanting to beat his own son if he thought he might have been gay. Is that so wrong? Who among us hasn't called for hate crimes against their own children on a time or two? And when asked about it later, he said he wouldn't tell the jokes again. Not because he realized that they were, hurtful or unfunny, but because people get mad at him now. Because we're all too sensitive these days. Queer people wouldn't shout about how these things aren't a joke and they actually happen to us. Those are just words, they don't mean anything. And when asked to apologize, he did. Well, sorta. Okay, he did that thing that rich people do where first they say nothing and then they say, oh, I've already addressed this. I'm not going to talk about it. Which is a weird thing that rich people get away with, because if I was late to work and my boss said, Hannah, where were you this morning? I said, I was out and around, but I'm here now. And he's like, no, seriously, where were you? And I'm like, I've already addressed this. I will say no more. I get fired. Which is actually, if for once in the world, some justice happened and he did in fact lose the job. But then, after losing his dream job, he made a really sincere apology and said that he was very sorry for all the harm that he had caused over the years and that he really regretted it. And you guys know there is nothing more heartfelt than an apology that only comes after you face the consequences of your actions. I do think that Dave talks a lot of shit about cancel culture for someone whose parents still speak to him. Don't you dare feel sorry for me. Don't you dare, because I'm sad about it. You guys laugh. That's how this works. Yeah, Dave has a couple of people angry at him on Twitter, but in my family, I don't have anywhere to go for Christmas. So, who's the real victim here? It's Dave. Seriously though, what is actually the worst that can happen to him? It's not like he can be out of work. He doesn't do anything anymore. He's still telling the same jokes from 5 years ago, and even then, those were just things middle schoolers jeered at each other on the playground. The best he can do, I'm going through puberty for a second time at age 26, and the best he can do is Caitlyn Jenner's never had a period? Come on, man. I'm not saying don't make fun of me. I'm saying if you're gonna do it right. There are things about the trans experience that are objectively hilarious. I call up my friend Anna, and I'm like, Anna, my boobs are growing. And she's like, yes, dear, that's what happens because she's 30, and I'm giving her war flashbacks to middle school. Cis people keep telling me that I need to go just watch the special because the last 15 minutes are so heartwarming. And I'm not going to do that because I have a policy. I only participate in self-harm if it's going to make for a good story on stage later. But I did go and read some summaries of what happens, and apparently in the last few minutes he takes the time to misgender a dead woman while talking about how unfunny he thought she was, and then gets some laughs by saying that he was too transphobic to give her a hug. And guys, I know that at this point I'm too queer to understand straight people emotions, but that's not fun. That's not heartwarming. That's horrifying. All right, I'm going to end on this, guys, which is just to say thank you for being such a great audience and listening and hearing this, because it is hard to talk about this. Ideas like Dave's, they're out there. This question of how can you be a woman if you weren't born one? And I have two things to say to that. One is, fuck you, I was born a woman. It just took everyone a while to notice. And two is, I don't actually know. gender is really complicated, and like I haven't studied it well enough, and I'm not qualified to really like say with confidence that I can define womanhood in a sentence or two. And if you think about it, doesn't that kind of prove that at the very least I'm not a man? And that, Dave, is how you make a point while telling a joke. Thank you, everyone, and good night.